All right, it is week 4 in CIT28. Client server databases. Really, we should just rename this Learning SQL. So for this week, coming into week 4, the Monday is a holiday. So just know that in this class, if a campus holiday falls on a due date, the item is moved one day. The due date is moved one day forward. So you can see here that this discussion is on the 3rd instead of on the 2nd, which is Monday. And by the way, calendar is great. I think in Canvas, I hope you use it. We're going to talk a bit about the problem sets today because we're going to do only problem sets this week. But in general, you're gonna see a change to the README file for problem sets. For lectures, they're still going to be the same. You'll be taking notes, but we're gonna, again, I just want to give you that because I know that as we move forward, these things become more clear, and as I see work submitted, it helps me clarify some requirements as well. But before we talk too much, I do want to say a bit about the grade comments because I've had some really good conversation in students' grades. So every day that I wake up, now this morning I'm running a little bit late, right? So actually we're in week 3 of the real world, and I graded yesterday, and so I haven't made my way through them because I wanted to get this video done so that I can release content. So, but in general, my goal is daily to grade. And so, but what happens is based on the volume of what I get, it's pretty high. And what happens is sometimes, because the only way I see your comments is actually if I go look in a specific spot in my campus email for a flag or just a notice about that. And sometimes based on the volume, I don't get it. So if you put a comment, this is what I want you to know. If you put a comment in there and I don't reply to you and you're expecting a reply, send me an email in Canvas, right? Because that's a great way if for some reason, give me a little time. I mean, hopefully I'll see it, but sometimes, again, just based on the volume I have, it may get lost. Okay? Okay, so the most common questions I got last week was how do I sign up? And you'll see that sign up after we pass the midway. I think I've kind of landed on somewhere after the midway part of the semester. We don't have a traditional midterm in this class. So at that spot, I will have laid out at least a draft of all the dates and times that I will offer these technical interview sessions. And then here's the deal. I have this class and then I have 2 other sections of my programming class. So all of you will get this schedule. And I'm actually going to time it so that you all get it at the same time, so to speak. This is actually going to be a benefit to being on Discord as well. The thing is, well, actually, because I'll put that notice out there, because what happens is there'll be a submission where you'll submit, hey, here's the date I want, and then I'll do the first come, first serve as far as putting it in the schedule. So you won't actually have to input anything. You'll just tell me I want that session time. Now, I get that maybe the times I offer may not always work for you, and I will do my best to accommodate. And this is why from the time the opening of the session becomes, available for you to sign up for, it'll be probably week 10, and it'll go all the way through. So we'll have 7 weeks for you to have a session somewhere. You only need to do one. Can you do it again? You can if it really doesn't go well. Typically, I say, Now, this kind of brings up the other common question, like how would I prepare for it? Well, the work you're doing here prepares you for it. And this is going to lead to a change that I'm going to make in the authenticate file. But because one of the things I get, actually, I'm going to hold that. So anyway, we'll hold that discussion for that item in this attendance. But so authentically doing the work that we are doing in this class is your best way to prepare for it. Because it's not that I would need to actually have you know every exact command. I'd want to see your thinking process. Like, how do you break things down when you're given a problem? How do you approach that? And here's where, in the world we live in, it gets a little more challenging. That's why the more authentic you're doing this work, and it's going to help you. Okay, so that was the most common questions I got, and some people were nervous. So the last thing I'll say about this is a great reason to come into office hours with me or connect with me so that you and I can have a conversation, because sometimes part of the nervousness is just not knowing the person that is doing the interview, okay? So, and I get it. Some people are like, I just don't do well at interviews. Well, this is not a formal interview, right? This is me attempting to assess how well you have gained the knowledge and skill in this class. Okay. So again, we'll have more questions, and you're welcome to ask more here. I'm sure I forgot some. I tried to answer what I saw was the most common. So for this attendance, let's talk about the data set. So for this week, we are only doing problem sets, and this is going to be based on normal ocean temperatures. And so what I want to do in this attendance is actually get you acquainted with, because it's one of the really important things you do when you actually have a new data set you're dealing with, is actually getting some time just playing with the data set before you jump in and try to answer your first problem, right? To write query to give the correct output. So I'm going to show you the process. Matter of fact, I looked at the instructions. So this is for the first item, right? So I'm going to actually just do this with you right now and then show you how to actually, what things I would do and what things I did do as I approached this new data set that I hadn't seen before. Okay? All right, so I have my code space open. I'm going to drop my video, put it over there. So over here in my code space, I have a new code space open today just because I wanted to kind of authentically do this. So what you want to do here is inside your PS0, you have the cyber chase directory, right? So you want to click on PS0, create a new folder called normals. And it should have an S, it should be lowercase, okay, because it's normals, meaning normal ocean temperatures, okay? So then in here, the first thing I'd recommend you do, and again, this is part of the instruction for the first item, so we're getting ahead a little bit, right? Good, I just saw an error. I need to fix that because this is not, this is still P0. Okay, good, yeah. So in this case, I'm going to talk about this for a minute because I know what I've shown students. I'm going to go back to the code. I've grabbed that URL. So right here, when you open by default, right, your terminal is setting, I don't need that, right? Hold on. That was funny. I had accidentally, if you noticed, actually clicked over here and got comments. I was like, why is that showing up? So part of this, right, is just learning. The more time you spend navigating this interface, the better, right? Just in general. And this is true. VS Code is such a popular editor. Anyway, back to here. Okay, so in here, what I've shown students is kind of the easy way, open an integrated terminal. And so what it will do is this folder, right? So if you open an integrated terminal, we'll change this. But you can also just do CD, like just at the command line. So if I want to do PS, I hit tab, it actually says, looks at the directory and says, okay, there's only one PS. So if I do in, now it'll just go to normal, right? So that's the alternative, and just good to know about how to do that, okay? So now in here, and I'd want to make sure I'm in this, I now would paste allow, right? So this is making sure I'm in that subdirectory, and now I'm going to paste, and now I'm getting the normal file. Now this is where you really have to be careful, and notice this is actually 28 megs, so this file is rather large. And so in this case, just make sure, because if you did that command, you know, somehow incorrectly, because remember we did a curl command, it said copy it over from there, and if you're in the wrong directory, it may not work, or place it somewhere you don't want it to be. Okay, so that's the first thing. So now, right, I'd clear. And now that I have it, right, so now I could do SQLite 3 and normals.db. Okay, so the other thing is I always start with, right, select star, and in this case from, but you kind of go, wait a minute, I haven't even dug into yet, Rio, and this is part of what I want you to get to know. I haven't even dug into this to the structure. So what I would do is dot schema. Okay, now dot schema, whew, large, right? These are all the columns in here. And by the way, if it was me, I would probably copy at least some of this so I didn't have to keep looking back into that README file. That would be a fine thing. Matter of fact, I think I'm going to have you do that. Right? So in other words, I do have you end up creating a README, which I will talk about the new requirements, here. Right? And then I'll have you do, of course, your normal heading there, right? So this would be problem set 0, normals, okay? And then this would be possibly, right, data, the normals data set, okay? So what I could do is take that content, and there's different ways to do this. We're not going to get too much into this because I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, right? So I could copy that, and I could always have that in here. And that way, when I start to write queries, I would have it. And what was cool is I generally do this, but I actually saw another student, I think it was Oscar, do this as well. And it's a really good thing to have in there, right? So that'd be the first thing I would do. And I recommend, you're following along right now with me as well. Now what you will end up doing is actually creating, like I said before, right, a heading for problem 1 through 6, okay? So I'm not going to create them all, it just takes longer, but that's the part you want to do. Right. So I'd come down here, and then it'd be problem, must have accidentally started typing off the keyboard, problem 1. Okay, so, but that's just the start of the README file. And so now what we want to do is start understanding what is in here. So we have an ID, we have a lat and long, and then we have these fields 0M, 5M. So you can look at either Harvard's, Harvard's page for this, right, for normal temperatures, because this is also in our file, right? So our file here, okay, so you can come down here and look at, here it is as well, and you could copy it just like this. That's one of the things often you want to do. So we have an ID that uniquely identifies the coordinates. What does that mean, right? So if you don't know what lat and long is, right, so what is lat and long? So latitude and longitude is a coordinate system that uses angles to describe the location of any space, right? Any space on Earth's surface. It is used for so many things. If you've never seen it, it'll be like, what in the world, right? But you can see a visual here. So we've broken the Earth into these coordinates, but also within them is even more detailed lat and long, so that we can have precise data for locations on Earth. But for our data set, we're only looking at ocean temperatures, so coordinates for ocean temperatures. But just because it is good to understand, you could just go lat and long. Let's just do lat and long for Fresno, just to see what that number would look like, right? So in here we have 36, right? And 119. And oftentimes, and in the data set, you'll see this. And in the data set, it will only have the number, then the decimal, and then the first place, I believe, in there. And we can look at that in a minute. And the longitude would be a minus number, okay? So would in this case, start thinking about this, would Fresno be in our data set? And the answer is no, because we're only looking at coordinates that are in the ocean, okay? So that's where you just understand the coordinate system that we have, and where Fresno in this case, here we have it, right, has this is a specific location, right? So if you actually were to go to Google Maps, maps.google.com, right, and we search in maps for Fresno, if you've ever looked up in here, right, those are the lat and long. And if I click somewhere else, then the lat and long would change. And matter of fact, here it will give you the lat and long. So in this case, from Madera County. Okay. So this lat and long is used in a lot of different spaces. I could zoom out, and then I could start looking at over the ocean if I hit lat and long. Okay, so now I can see these here. Now you might think this exact location would be in that data set, and it wouldn't be because of the way the space that encompasses, like it's a large amount of space. I mean, even at the size of this database, the quadrant that they've used to indicate the lat and long is wide, okay? And I'll show you what I mean by this in a minute. But first, I just want you to understand what is lat and long, okay? And I'm going to come back to this because I played around with a way in Google to actually go to some of these locations. Okay, so let's go back to, let's go back. Okay, let's go back to the schema. Actually, let's go back to the work. I have so many things open. Here we go. So in this case, we have the 9D, we have the lat and the long, okay? And then we have 0M, 5M. So this is the temperatures, right? So these are the column names, and this is all numeric data, right? For 0, so at the surface, at 5 meters, at 10 meters, so on and so forth. And notice there's a lot of data here, which is why our first query probably should not be, right, select all, because it's just going to be so long. So what we probably want to do is actually let's go ahead and set up our file. Let's go ahead and set up our PS, right, 0. What is the name of the file? Hold on, did I get that right? Right, I had to remind myself, right? So in this case, right, we're doing under here. I accidentally, and by the way, if this ever happens to you where you start to create something, you haven't finished it, you can right click and rename. So it's actually PS P1, okay, so part 1, right, -q.sql. Now we have had a query name that before, but that was up in CyberChase, okay? So now I have that file. So now I can do select. And again, I wouldn't do star. This is just our playing around, right? So in this case, let's do this. Let's just do like getting to know the normals data set. And again, yes, I want you to have this in there, right? Okay, so now what would we do, right? So we could come back over here. And by the way, the other thing I like to do is often have two things that I'm looking at, like I can split my screen. So because I don't always want to type these out, so I could say select lat, right? So actually I could just do the quotes as well. Okay, select lat, comma. Remember, if you want more than one, it's a comma. The second one, right? Now you want to know from, right? So now let's go back over here. Let's actually kind of minimize because I have a lot of things here, and I kind of want to be able to see here, right? From, right? So this would be normals, right? Okay. So select those from normals. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and get as well, right? The OM, right? And let's get the 5M. Okay, from normals. And let's do this. Let's limit, right, 20. Okay, so now that I have that, right, I have my, and I haven't even set up my other terminals, right, yet, more than anything, because I don't have to do a proof on this file, right, we're just getting to know the database, right. So here I could just say .read, right, p1 -q.sql, okay. And what did I forget? Ah, very good. And see, this is where you start playing with, okay, did I have everything in there? Select latitude from normal. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, I didn't realize there was select on the line. So that's the other thing, right? Is just seeing the errors. So dot read p1.q.sql. Good. Okay. And by the way, just as a standard, we should all be using box. It just an up arrow now. Cool, right? So I can start looking at these. So I see my lat and my longs, right? So here are the locations. Here's the temperature, right? So this is the temperature at those locations. So this is good. This is like us getting to know, right? And then you continue, and this will be one of the things I'll suggest is like write maybe a sample query, right? And tell the class what it is you played with. This will be part of your output that you would do here. But just to complete this, right? So again, this is part of getting to know the data set, right? So what I would do is go ahead and add my other one, right? I still need to do, I'm going to do the P, and I'm going to do normal, right? I'm going to do SQL tree, and then normals.db. Cool, right? And here's where I would only one time here, okay, out. Now this would be pw1.text. Did I say P? Probably part 1, okay? So I've created that output file. Now again, you don't have to do a proof file on this one, but the idea is that you have that one set up. And then I've noticed many of you that I've been talking to have also been having, you go through and name them. So this would be your Git workflow. Okay. Okay, so that's just a taste of what I think, and this hopefully will help you, right? So basically what we did here is we walked through and go ahead and let's do this, right? Let's go ahead and finish this, right? Because if I remember right, matter of fact, let me go ahead and get out of here, right? There we go, okay? So I'm going to clear this, right? So now I got out of there. Oh, and actually I could have used that one because I already had it open, but I will. Git add star, right? Git commit -m, right? Setup complete. Oh yeah. Okay. I'm going to bring that back because I made a mistake. Okay. Cool. And git push. I'm going to see if I get that. Because I think when I did this originally, because that file was so big, so it's writing that takes it a minute warning. So when you get this warning, and this is part of why I wanted to do this today, right? Large files detected. What you want to do here, and I think this should be fine, if you go over to your GitHub, make sure, I'm using a new one called course repo, so I'd want to make sure that under that normals, yeah, that database came across. And again, that's part of why I wanted to show you this, because I knew that through an error when I originally did it. Okay, so make sure you do that first commit. So now let's finish up talking about this requirement I'm adding. So and we're 23 minutes in. So and so in your reply, right, I want you to play around, write another query, and tell the class what you wrote, like, and why you wrote it, and what you did to get used to that. Oh, and by the way, the thing I didn't show you, and you could play with this, is actually in Google Maps, you could, okay, I am going to show you this because I think it's fun to see. In this case, let's go back to here. Actually, I got to go back into, let's see if I go up enough, right? And then I could do p dot read p1 dash q dot sql squeal. Right, so if I wanted to do 77, right, so I could actually do this. I did this before and it was really fun to see. So if I do 77 comma, and then I come back and grab the other one, right? So 77 168. Let's see where that's at. And it'll be somewhere out in the ocean, but it's still fun to see. It's like, oh yeah, look at that. So that's where it is. So if I go look, if I zoom out, I can see where that is located. Oh, wow, look at that. off the coast. I can't see it here. It's in the Southern Ocean. Okay. So that is kind of fun because some of these problems that you're going to run into when you do these actually is helpful to kind of see things, right? To kind of get a feel for, and look, ice sheets. Anyway, the ice, what are they called? Not the caps, but the whatever floating, right? Pieces of ice floating in the ocean, right? So that's fun to do. So let's come back here. So I started down this aisle and then I went to talk about that because I thought that is kind of fun to look at. So now from here on out, because here's what I have really been thinking a lot about in this class. Like, because of the world we live in, finding something that gives you the answer to these problem sets is relatively easy, okay? And part of what I want to help you understand is why going there first is not helpful. And it is one of those struggles as a teacher right now in the time that we're at, that we try to figure out how to actually help students learn, because part of what you're getting from a class like this, and I hope you heard me say this kind of at the very beginning, is the ability to problem solve, the ability to actually develop your thinking skills and your analytical skills. And if you just allow the LLMs to do the work for you, you miss that step, and trust me, your technical interview may be a bit more challenging, but that's not really the only reason you want to do it in this way. And I'm trying to help give you some guide rails, because I get how easy it is to do it. And I was playing with something the other day, and matter of fact, I think I was working on next week's work where we were getting into subqueries, and it was like, yeah, it was a bit challenging, but I waited until after I had actually coded the solution to actually go see what was out there. And I'm like, oh God, that's right. There's just so much out there. So what I'm trying to do is create a framework that helps you do this. And in that sense, that's why I'm being more clear today about the README file. And I really want to hear your feedback about this approach, right? Because I get it. Like, you're working, you have other classes, you have responsibilities, and then you're setting down to do this work. And of course, it's easy to go find solutions. But I guess, I hope for most of you, like, you see the benefit. But I'm also open to a discussion because I don't know everything. This world is constantly changing. Okay, so from now on, 30 points has always been part of the problem set, the authenticate file, okay? But from here going forward is you need to document your thinking process when you read the problem, right? So when you read the first problem that we have, in this case the query, right? So, and I'm not going to write this first one with you, but write a query that finds the normal ocean surface temperatures off the Gulf of Maine, off the coast of Massachusetts, to find the temperature. Look at the data associated with, and it even gives you the coordinates to look for, which is awesome, right? So, and when you input these, we'll give you this, you're not putting in the degrees, you're just putting in, and in this one, a specific location. So, and this helps you, and this even tells you, so this first one, actually, that's why I didn't do it, is it actually shows you, it gives you some really good information, right? So again, how would you break this down? How did you get to the solution? Maybe it's not a long process, maybe it's a relatively short process, okay? So that's what I will look for as your thinking process. You can show me your query attempts, right? But it will not be enough going forward. Right? Now, here's the other thing, and this is the part I gave some thought to, is like, if you've tried and were unsuccessful in coming up with the solution, because one of the problems this week did take me a bit, matter of fact, it was this last one right here. This one took me a bit to kind of wrap my head around, right? And I ended up having to use the where and the between. I'll give you that hint on this one, okay? So when I was doing it, I spent the time to find a solution in my own understanding, because that is why I'm here. because I want to develop. I have a coding skill set, and absolutely does it help me with this stuff because it's that analytical thinking, right? But that's part of what you want to get. So, but I get too when it's like if I've spent so long and I still haven't gotten the answer, when I know the solution's out there, why wouldn't I just go find it? And so here's your option if that is what you try. But my hope, and you'll see this, and let's just read through it. If you've tried and were unsuccessful in coming up with your own solution and found a solution. Now, am I going to show you that part? I actually debated on that part, and I'd love to hear your feedback about that, because that also, for the students who may not know how to find it, puts them at a disadvantage in the world that we live as well. Whew, so many levels of what we think about, right? If you find a solution, then tell me the source, right? Give it to me. Give me the source. And in your README file, right, what you tried. So tell me what you tried. You still document it, right? And then give me the solution, right? And actually, I'm gonna actually modify this because I've been playing with this wording earlier. But give me what you learned from watching it, right? Give me what part of this you were able to learn from, because there is still a part of learning that comes. But the key to that is giving yourself some time in the uncomfortableness. And that's really part of what I think happens, is that it's uncomfortable. Okay, I'm going to speak only for me right now. It is uncomfortable when I don't know the solution. And I have to actually go give myself some thinking time around it. But the more I allow that uncomfortableness to hang out, the less uncomfortable I feel. I'm just telling you, and I've been in this field quite some time doing some kind of analytical, and it still is something, because as we age, by the way, our brains change. And what part of what you want to get, and this is just based on my own research of health and wellness, is what we call cognitive reserve. And this work is great for building cognitive reserve. Anyway, my point about this is, if you try and you are unsuccessful, you find your own solution, and tell me the source. And actually, in this case, I modified this. It'll be, tell me what you learned, right? And then tell me what you learned from reviewing the solution, right? But if it's the only thing you tell me, right, yeah, does it hurt your grade? But if you tell me what you learned, I still would give you some of those 30 points. And this is where, it's a challenge to teach, but I'm up for it. I'm totally, are you up for it is the question. So in your reply, in addition to, right, any other questions about this, and by the way, again, you do want to have that commit done and make sure you have those files set up. Did I set up all the files? Let's see, I think I did not set up, I set up the README file, I set up the Q file. Yeah, so I actually had all the files. So make sure you there, write this one, right, the getting to know. And by the way, do not forget, right, here, then you write the first, well, now this is not our first query, right? So you'll now, right? And generally in this sense, keep these single spaced when you're writing the queries. It helps me because of one of the processes that I do. Anyway, I hope this helps you move into this week. I look forward to seeing you. By the way, I've seen several of you in my office. I really have enjoyed that. Please consider coming to see me, if nothing else, but to get used to chatting with me so that when the interviews come around, maybe you'll feel more comfortable. All right, enough from me. Longer than I'd normally like to go, but I hope it was beneficial.